We're going to work on finishing up the throttle body and then positioning them correctly along with the rest of the engine. So we're going to go back to our Blender file and we're going to select this throttle body piece, press tab to go to edit mode, switch to vertex select and alt right click here. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale this in a little. E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring it out some. E to extrude, right click to cancel, S to scale it in, and then E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring it out a bit more. This one should be the furthest one out compared to the others. Then do E to extrude, right click to cancel and scale this in. I think I want to make some of these a little shorter, so I'm going to do Control plus a couple times. And then I'm just going to make this a little bit shorter and then do Alt right click, Control plus and make this one a little bit shorter as well. Once you're happy with the distance of these, you're just going to Alt right click here, E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it back on the Y axis, and we're going to actually snap it to a point back here. So just grab it on the Y axis, hold Control, snap it back there. Then we're going to hold Alt and Shift and we're going to right click here, then do Shift and Q and that'll fill in this area. One other thing I wanted to do is go to Face Select and then we're going to go over here and we're going to select these faces on the inside. So there should be 3 of them, just select all of them. This part actually doesn't get pushed in too far. There's actually only maybe a little bit of space between the end and where it's actually pushed into. So this is a bit more accurate to what we're looking for. And next we're going to be creating, there's this little piece, this circular piece that goes across here to help open and close the throttle. So what we're going to want to do is center it around this area. Since we already have it selected, we're just going to do Shift S and cursor to selected. That'll help us get this perfectly in the center of this circular object. And then we're going to go to create and we're going to choose a cylinder this time, so go to cylinder. And we're going to change the vertex count to 6. It actually looks fine with 6, so that's a pretty small number, but it looks fine in this case. We're going to scale this down, and we're going to do R, Y, and then 90 and press enter, and scale it down some more and bring it over. We're going to want to actually center this, so to do that, what we're going to do is do Control R, we're going to left click, right click, then we're going to select this piece again, do Control L. We want to change this to individual origins. And then you're just going to grab it on the x-axis, hold Control and snap it to this point. So now we know it's perfectly centered, so when we do S and then X and scale this out, it's going to be equal on the left and right, so it's going to be nice and in the center. We do want this to stick through a bit, so just do S and X until it sticks through on both the top and bottom, but it shouldn't be sticking out on either of these other areas here. We're done with this edge loop, so we're going to Alt right click, do delete and dissolve edges. We also want to make sure the scale of this is correct, so now you can do Control L, and you're going to not want to scale it on the x-axis because we just perfectly aligned it on the x-axis. So do S, Shift and X, and then scale it to your liking, whatever you feel is appropriate. We're also going to want to rotate this so that we have a flat face on this side as well as the other side. So we're going to do R, X, and then 30 and press enter, and now we're going to have a nice flat side to work with here because we're going to be adding in a screw or what looks like a screw to hold this in place. Now we're going to create the screws that go here, so we're going to create a circle and change the vertex count to 6 and press enter, do R, X, and then 90, press enter, S to scale this down, and we're going to do Control 1 to go to back view. We're going to scale this down and then move it into position with G and just continue scaling it down. When I did this the first time, I just kind of made it basically the same size as here, so from top to bottom it would fit the same size. We're actually going to have to align this though, and to do that we're just going to do Z for wireframe, Control R, and then left click, right click to get a edge loop down the center of this. Then you're going to select one of these points, do Control L. You still want this to be on individual origins, and then go to wireframe and just grab it on the Z-axis, hold Control, snap it to that center point. That'll make sure it's perfectly centered, and now you can see it is perfectly centered because there's a distance. The distance between the top and bottom are the same, so you can tell it's centered. So we're going to do Alt right click, delete, and choose dissolve edges to get rid of that edge. We're going to Alt right click here, and again we're just going to scale this up. You can make it about the same size, you can make it a little bigger. It's really up to you, it's not really that important. Then what we're going to do is we're going to bring this back on the y-axis, so you want to bring this back on the y-axis. If you want to, you can actually just grab it on the y-axis, hold control and snap it to this point. That'll make sure it's perfectly flush with this face. And we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring it out slightly. And then we're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, scale it in some. Then E to extrude, right click to cancel, scale it in some more. And we're going to bring it back a little bit. Then we'll do E to extrude, right click to cancel and scale it in slightly. Then one last time, E to extrude, right click to cancel and bring it back. Then we're going to fill in this face. We're just going to press F and then you're going to select these two vertices and do J to join them to create two quads. So that's a pretty simple screw here. You can even go to face select and just select these two center faces, Control plus a bunch of times, and adjust how far out this screw is going to be sticking. So just whatever you feel is appropriate, just go with that. And you can already see our nice little screw. It does need some smooth shading though. So if we select a face, do Control L, go to shading and UVs and turn on faces. It now looks a little bit more like a screw. It'll look better, even a little bit better, once we add in the bevel modifier, which we'll do later. And now at this point you're going to want to adjust it on the x-axis. So wherever you feel you want it on the x-axis, maybe here is good. That looks kind of good, or maybe over a little bit more. And then we're just going to mirror it on to the other side. So since we have our cursor already set up, we can just do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, change this to 3D cursor, S, X, -1 and press enter, and then do Control N to recalculate the normals. So now we have one on the left, one on the right. To make the back of the screw, we're just going to tab back into edit mode. We're going to select one of these faces, do Control L, Shift D to duplicate, and right click to cancel. I'm going to switch this back to median point, and we're just going to bring this back until it's back behind this, and then we're going to do S, Y, and -1 to flip it on the y-axis and press enter. Control N to recalculate the normals, and we're going to actually get rid of some of these faces. So we're going to select these two, Control plus a couple times, then do delete and choose faces. Switch to vertex select, Alt right click and press F. Select these two vertices and J to join. Face select, select these two faces, and we're going to bring them out just to give this a bit of roundness to the back of this. We're going to do Control L to select all this, and we're going to do S to scale this down a bit. The back is going to be a little bit smaller than the front. That's what we're trying to achieve, so just scale it down a little bit until you're happy. And then of course we're going to want to snap it again so it's right up against this. So we're going to do G and then Y and hold control and snap it here. So now it's flush with the back face. Then of course we're going to want to mirror it onto the other side. So we're going to switch this to 3D cursor. We're going to do Shift D to duplicate, right click to cancel, S, X, and then -1 and press enter, and Control N to recalculate the normals. So now we have these little back pieces, and we also have the front of the screw. To fill in this area, we're just going to tab back into edit mode. We're going to switch to vertex select, and we're going to alt right click here, Z for wireframe, B to box select, and deselect those extra vertices. Then we're just going to press F to fill this in. Then we're going to select this vertex. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel. I'm going to switch this to median point, and then just bring this over. I'm going to grab it on the x-axis, hold control and snap it to this point so it's at the same x value. We're going to do Control R, left click, and bring this over. I'm going to grab this on the x-axis and again hold control and snap it to this point so it has the same x value. And I'm going to do Control R here, left click, right click, and again grab it on the x and snap it to here. Then we're going to fill in this face by selecting these two, pressing F. Now we have a face here. And down here we want to do Control R, left click, right click, Control R again, left click, right click, go to face select and select these faces. We actually don't want this face, so we're going to hold Shift and right click to deselect it. Then we're going to do delete and choose faces. We're going to switch to vertex select, Alt right click to get these vertices. Then we're going to hold Shift and right click to select these up here. So you want these 6 up here, and you want this whole edge loop here. Then you're going to do Shift and Q to do bridge edge loops. If you don't have your hotkey set up, go to Mesh, Edges, and Bridge Edge Loops. To finish this off, we're going to select this vertex. We're going to do E to extrude, right click to cancel, bring it out a little bit. grab these two vertices, press F to make a face here. I'm going to bring this one over and back a bit just to kind of meet up with the rest of the mesh here. Then I'm going to do Control R, left click, and bring this up to basically meet up with this point right here. Then I'm going to select this vertex and these two vertices and just press F to fill that in. On the back side, we're going to grab these two vertices and we're going to do E to extrude and right click to cancel and just bring them down and maybe over a bit. And we can select these two and then press F. Then just adjust these vertices as necessary to kind of make this a little bit nicer. So that's looking pretty good for now. The only other thing you might want to do is do A twice and Control N to recalculate the normals and just make sure everything's in the correct position. I might want to change the Z position of these to be a little bit closer to that. And then perhaps select this one, E to extrude, right click to cancel, and just bring it down some to finish this off. And I'm also going to grab these two and then grab it on the y-axis, hold Control, snap it there. But I think I actually want to do this one by one just to make sure they have the correct X value, because it doesn't look like they do. And you could do the same with these other two just to be sure if you want to. The last thing to do is to position this, so if we want to, we can just do Shift D to duplicate in object mode and right click to cancel, tab into edit mode, A twice to select everything, bring this over. You can do Control 1 for back view as to scale this down if you need to, and just start positioning it. The way this works is these little outside circles kind of meet up with the outside of this, so you kind of want those little outside circular things to be right at the edge, kind of meeting up with that circular part on the outside as best you can. So just scale it up until it's pretty much the same size as that, maybe a little bit smaller so that it can fit through, and that should be good. And we'll just bring it out a little bit so it's not sticking in as much, and maybe down a little bit so it's not sticking out on the top, and maybe scale it down slightly so it's not sticking out so badly on that side. And then we'll just take another look in back view. So I do want this to be scaled up a bit more just so that it fills this area a bit better, but I just want to make sure it's not sticking out too far on the top or too far on this side. So that's probably going to be okay right there, except this needs to really be centered. So it will stick out a little bit too far here. We can adjust that if we want, but I think this is a decent positioning. It looks pretty good. So if you want the mirror, just go to object mode and go to this object modifier. We're actually going to add a bevel too, so let's just do the bevel first. We'll add in the bevel to this. Change the segments to 2, change this to angle, and I think I used like 60 degrees, that should probably be fine. And we also want to go to tools and turn on smooth shading so we can actually see the bevel modifier in action. And the other thing we want to do is make sure this is mirrored, so we're going to go to add modifier, we're going to choose mirror. You can turn on clipping as usual, but we probably won't be making a whole lot of changes, so it doesn't matter too much. You can also go to this object and add in the same modifiers if we want, so just go to add modifier and turn on bevel angle of 60 and segments to 2 and turn on smooth shading so it's the same as these. Once you're done with that, we're just going to save it by going to File and Save. Thank you to our awesome Patreon supporters. If you'd like to become a Patreon supporter yourself, head on over to patreon.com/StephenBrooks. Thank you for your support.